One thing that is really common for people with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism to be affected by is dairy, which is really tough because that is a pretty good source of calcium and we all need a little bit of calcium. But I wanted to go over with you some of my favorite ways to get a little extra calcium in, as well as the connection of calcium to your thyroid. But if you could do me a very big favor first, if you could go ahead and subscribe to my channel and then hit that bell so you get a notification every time I release a new video. So what does calcium even have to do with the thyroid? One of the tests that I do with all of my clients is something called HTMA, that's hair tissue mineral analysis. And it takes a deep dive into looking at your minerals as well as your metals that are present, and it's done via the hair. But one thing that I see is a really common pattern on a lot of people when I start working with them, particularly the women that I work with, is we'll either see extremely elevated calcium levels or extremely low calcium levels. So the connection to the thyroid is that if we have really high levels of calcium, calcium is supposed to be inside your bone and teeth. So if it's elevated on a hair test, that means it is coming out of the bone and teeth. And it doesn't do a very good job when it's out of the bone and teeth. It can actually cause a lot of issues with thyroid hormone function, the thyroid itself. If it gets too elevated, we actually call it a calcium shell, because it will literally shell around thyroid tissue, around the cells where your thyroid hormones are supposed to go in. So it will not allow your thyroid to work properly. It will not allow your thyroid hormones to even go in the cell. So your thyroid blood test might actually look okay for your thyroid hormones, but it doesn't mean you're using them. And some of that could be if you have elevated calcium levels, it's not going to let that happen. So that's why we need to make sure that we have that in check. Also, if they get too low, they get severely depleted, that can also cause an issue because everything's just going to kind of slow down. The metabolism is going to slow, the thyroid's going to slow. So we need to find that happy medium. So the way to check that is to obviously have a hair tissue mineral analysis. Like I said, every one of my clients we do this with because I see some of the biggest connections to thyroid with minerals, and calcium is one of the big drivers there. It's the very first mineral on the test, by the way, which there's a reason, because it really is such a big driver for what can happen with the metabolism, with the thyroid, and the adrenals for that matter as well. So how can we get calcium then? If a lot of people with hypothyroidism, especially Hashimoto's, are really sensitive to dairy, including myself, I cannot have very much dairy. One way is if you can test out, first of all, to see if you are sensitive to cow's milk, that type of dairy, is you literally have it every single day, 2 to 3 times a day, typically around 3 times a day for about 3 days in a row, and you check and see what symptoms you have. If there are symptoms that are popping up or they're getting worse that you already had, then you know you cannot tolerate dairy. So you want to take it out for at least 30 days and give it a break. And then when you reintroduce it, you do the exact same thing to reintroduce it and see how you do with it. I personally cannot do that. I cannot have cow's milk. Even if you get raw, organic, sometimes that can be very helpful for people as well. I still am one of those where I cannot do it. So where else do I get my calcium source from? Sardines are a really, really high source of calcium. Anything with almonds, even like almond milk, those are a really good source of calcium. It's a great way. Like a lot of people, again, can't do cow's milk, but they can do something like almond milk or eat almonds. Grapefruit juice is another really good way. Be careful with grapefruit juice, FYI, if you're taking thyroid medication. They cannot be very close together at all because it will affect the absorption of your thyroid medication, usually 4 hours away. Goat's milk, goat's cheese, those are really good sources of calcium as well. Yogurt, whether it's goat's milk or it's cow's milk, yogurt's a great way. I know a lot of people like Greek yogurt. Some people do a little bit better with Greek yogurt than they do with straight up cow's milk yogurt. They tolerate that better as well. Anything green, leafy greens, collard greens are probably one of the highest ones in calcium. And then there's something else called pearl powder. It's something that you can buy on Amazon, and there's other sources where you can get it as well. But pearl powder has a ton of calcium in it as well. It's a great way to get it. And even eggshell powder. So you actually can buy eggshell powder. I have seen it, but the easiest way to get to it is if you eat eggs. And again, eggs do fall in the dairy family, but I tolerate eggs just fine. I just can't have like cow's milk, that dairy. But eggshell powder, you literally eat the eggs and you like basically dry out the eggshells. You let it dry out and then you put them in a little blender thing, like even the little mixers that you use to like grind up nuts and seeds or coffee beans. Those work really well, but you grind it in there and you make it a powder. And then you just like stick it on food, or you put it in smoothies or whatever. You make it into a really fine powder that you can't, like, you're not like crunching it and tasting it. But that's another really good way to get calcium in as well. Like I said, we need that happy medium. We need that fine balance. There's a Goldilocks effect with calcium. We don't want too much, but we don't want too little either, because that will also affect us, and it will just tap out the other minerals as well. Because like I said, calcium is a really big driver. So those are some great ways to get calcium in. Like I mentioned, you can test out if you do tolerate dairy. What I do recommend, if you do cow's milk dairy, is it needs to be as raw as possible or organic. That's going to be your best way. None of the hormones and antibiotics and those types of things should not be in the dairy, because that will definitely affect you as well. So those are my tips when it comes to calcium. Like I said, we need that Goldilocks effect. And if you have questions with it, reach out, especially if you have questions about doing the hair tissue mineral analysis test, my favorite test. Like I said, I do it with every single one of my clients, and that's why, because minerals are such a driver for what your thyroid and your adrenals are doing. So definitely reach out and let me know on that. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.